Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Scale with Joy show. So I am here with my friend, Christina Jandali. We met last year at an event and completely hit it off. So Christina, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we are on two different coasts, but we realize that we actually share a brain. We totally think the same way about business and life, and we're very practical when it comes to business, but also very heart-centered. So, Christina, if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing a little bit about your path and your journey, and then I want to talk to you about something very specific that you know a lot about that I think our audience will love.
Yeah, absolutely. So I help online entrepreneurs grow and engage in profitable Facebook groups so they can sell out their programs and scale their businesses. And for me, it all kind of started, I was actually in the corporate space. So I was working in the financial industry. I was managing wealthy people's money. We had over $500 million of client assets under management just with our team. And all the boxes that were checked. I had the successful career that I'd spent years building up. I had a husband, money in the bank, the house, all the things that you think that you could want. And my daughter was born, and I remember looking at her in the hospital room, just wanting all the world of possibility for her, when it really hit me that who was I to want that for her when I was crossing off the boxes, but there was a piece of me that really felt like I was dying, or a piece of me that felt like I was missing, and I didn't really know what that was. And so I made a commitment in that moment that I was going to pave the way of possibility for her and go after my dreams of whatever that was. I didn't even quite know what that was at the time. But anyways, I was going to figure it out. And I'd love to say, that everything changed in that moment, but it was really the seed that was planted. And it wasn't until I had my second child that I actually started to realize, okay, like now it's time to get moving. And so I started building out coaching consulting business, and I started working with financial advisors and different sales professionals, business owners before I started, narrowing it down more specifically to online. But I remember as I was building out this online practice, it was all of the things that came naturally to me before in building out, in the financial industry was really centered around relationships. And somehow it felt really cold to me with email marketing that I would send out an email and then I didn't know who was on the other end of it. I'd wait for a response. You might get someone to reply back, but you didn't really know who was on the other end of that conversation. And I felt like there was a disconnection, and it showed up in my results because they were pretty lackluster. There were a lot, my revenue was nowhere near where I had expected it to be. And I was frustrated thinking, I'm doing all the right things. I've got it all figured out. So where's the gap here? There's something that I'm missing. And I realized, how do I create those relationships, true relationships with people online? And that's really where I discovered the power of being able to use a Facebook group to be able to have those connections with your audience so that you have the opportunity to get to know them, to be able to orchestrate their journey into becoming, from lead to buyer as well. So that's kind of what's brought me here to where I am today.
So good. So you're a seven-figure business owner, an online business, you have a family, you have some freedom. I mean, living the dream, right? As an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Not everybody says that.
I
So
know
that's good.
it is. I'm like, yeah, not just the boxes checked now, but actually really enjoying it and loving what I get to do, and excited to get up. I mean, that was the biggest thing too, shifting from corporate is like, oh my gosh, hitting the snooze button every single morning, like dragging
Right.
yourself out of bed to like actually like jumping out of bed excited to start the day. So yes.
That's awesome. So we're going to dig into Facebook groups because I actually have some experience with it. My clients ask me questions about it. And one of the biggest concerns that I think entrepreneurs that already have established businesses have is that it's going to end up just being this huge time suck. Like, do you find that that is something that a lot of people are concerned with in starting a Facebook group?
100%. This is what I hear often is like the worry is like, I don't want to be spending all of my time doing this. And is this really gonna add to the bottom line? Is this going to make a difference in the business? Is it going to warrant the investment for time? And so there's a couple things that go with that. One is that if you're not managing your group effectively, then you probably are going to be in there all day, responding to people, managing conversations, and that's not what you signed up for, right? That's not what you signed up for. So it's not the Facebook group itself that creates the opportunity to be able to, generate high-end clients and to generate more conversions and sales in the business, but it's what you actually do inside of your Facebook group. So when you set up your Facebook group effectively and optimize your Facebook group automatically starts building your email list for you. You have the opportunity to be able to orchestrate conversations inside the group where you're facilitating the community, but you're not necessarily the person that's, front and center. The other thing is, when it comes to when you have your group optimized, is you're really bringing people through a series or a sequence, that's moving them towards that buying decision. So everything that you're doing in the group is really meant to evoke desire for your paid programs, services, products that you're selling. So it's moving them through that buying journey. Without having that structure, without having that strategy, it's easy to flail about. It's easy to get stuck up in what I call the ego metrics. We all want likes and comments because it makes us feel good.
Yeah.
Right. But those are the focusing on those metrics actually kills your opportunity for sales and often overwhelms people with too much information. And so when you get stuck in what I call that engagement bubble, is when you're focused on likes and comments and you're pumping out a lot of content, you're engaging with people, you're trying to get those likes, you're trying to get those comments, but you're really not leading your people anywhere. So it's kind of like a dead end road. And imagine sitting on a rocking chair and you're rocking back and forth, but you're not actually going anywhere, right? And so if you're not focused on the right things, you can get stuck in there. And you can end up being an overworked hustler where you're just spending all this time on the wrong things. So there's a right way to do it. And then there's the, lacking the strategy and just being there thinking that the Facebook group's the thing, but it's what you're actually doing inside your group that matters.
Totally. And so we're going to do some myth busting. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about different objections that people who are listening would probably have to starting Facebook groups, because I've certainly heard them. And as you know, I work with multiple 7-figure business owners within my consultancy, and I hear it all the time. They'll say, well, isn't that just like tire kickers? Aren't just people in there getting free information and they're never going to buy from you? And why should I even start one? And I don't get it. And those are things that I've heard from established business owners in the past. So what would you say to somebody like that?
So yes, 100%. There's always the fear of I don't want a whole bunch of freebie seekers that are just going to consume all my stuff and then never buy from me. So there's a couple of things that we want to look at. Number one, and this is one thing that Laura and I totally geek out on, we love metrics and and numbers, right?
Yes.
So I want you to think that, the industry average is with an expectation of, if you have 100 emails, 2% of those people will buy from you when you're running a campaign, right? Just as basic metrics. Now, you can increase those numbers, but let's just look at bare bones metrics, 2%. So that means 98% of people on your email list are not buying from you, right? And so when you transition over to a Facebook group, my experience is that many of my clients start to see 3, 5, even 10%. In fact, I was speaking to a student yesterday and she had a 31% conversion rate on her campaign that she ran, running it through her Facebook group. Because why do people buy online? They buy because they feel a connection to you and they feel like they resonate, they connect to what it is that you're sharing. And so they feel like they're part of something. They feel like they're heard. They feel like they're understood. They feel like you've got the solution for them. That comes from creating this connection. And hands down, Facebook groups are the number one way to be able to create that connection online in a leveraged way. Because when you're in your group, you create a conversation with one person, everybody gets to experience and view that conversation. So that's one key piece of it, is realizing just the metrics that you're going to see a higher conversion when you're using your group alongside, other platforms like your email list. And the other thing is the languaging and the messaging that you use to call in and attract members in your group will be representative of the people that come into your group. So if you're tackling and speaking to low-level problems or talking about brokenness or people that, the challenges that people face that are in that broke mentality or that are tire kickers or they're just consuming, well, then you're going to call in and you're going to attract those type of people. So it's important the languaging that you're using for making the invitations for people is speaking to a higher caliber person or a higher value client that will be more responsive, kind of like using, as the phrase, Frank Kern always says, don't use minnow bait to attract a whale, right? You gotta use whale bait if you want the whale. So your messaging and how you're going to call people in is going to make a difference. And then lastly, when you're setting up your group, you can ask people 3 questions when they join your group. Well, one of those questions should be, should be a qualifying question so that you're not just letting everybody into your group. And what makes a quality group is exclusivity. That means it's not right for everyone. So if someone's not the right fit, and it's obvious to you that they're not your ideal client or your ideal buyer, your ideal customer, well, then don't let them in the group. That just creates the opportunity to create more of that exclusivity inside of your group for the right people.
So interesting. So I'm going to take a pause for just a second from these myths and busted myths, I guess is what I'll call them, and talk about numbers for a minute. So you and I are both very interested in metrics and numbers. And I think it's something that came naturally for you because you came from the finance area. It didn't as much for me. I came from creative.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons why I love it so much is because it really does strip the emotion out of things, right? Like it gets rid of the I thinks and I the believes, and I just wouldn't. If somebody presented me with that offer, I would, the focus group of one comments that you often get with people, right? And so for you, when you are thinking about metrics and you're thinking about numbers, what are some of the things that you focus on in your business that really help you just stay focused, really stay on point with what it is that your objectives are? What are some of the kind of habits that you have?
Yeah. So like key pillars of metrics that we're watching, is that what you're?
Yeah, absolutely. And then also like the habits, like what type of habits do you have around your business when it comes to keeping an eye on numbers? Because I think that's something that a lot of people might not be thinking about when it comes to growing seven-figure business, but you and I know it's pretty important.
Yeah, so I think one of when we take a look at business in its most basic format is like we're looking at leads and we're looking at sales. So
Yeah.
really that's like the two most important metrics, and we can measure all sorts of other different things that we can take a look at and get down the rabbit hole of those things. But really when it comes down to it, those are the things that matter, is like our leads and our sales. So every time that we're running a campaign, we're doing a debrief on a campaign to break down every single, like at the entry point from the point that someone comes into the campaign to all the way through into becoming the buyer or not making their buying decision, and everything in between. So whenever we're running a campaign, we're taking a look at leads in, we're taking a look at where there's drop-offs in the campaign, where people are dropping off within the campaign. We're taking a look at what worked well, what didn't work well, because it does change. Even though we have something that we have fully dialed in that's working, well, it's like what worked yesterday sometimes doesn't work tomorrow. And so it's about being able to dial in like what's working, and are we seeing trends on the uprise for those metrics. So leads in, where the drop-offs are, how many people are becoming buyers, and then also what is it that, with the total, like our conversion rates, which we were talking about before as well, right? Taking a look at conversion rates, and also just taking a look at, as we go through, making sure that our earnings per lead, this gives us the opportunity, if we take a look at like our total sales in a campaign, not to get too much in the weeds here, we take our total sales in a campaign and take our total leads in the campaign, divide that, and we get our total sales divided by total leads, we're getting our earnings per lead. So this gives us the idea of like how much we can pay to acquire a lead. So we're taking a look at like, okay, is it profitable, right? Where are we at with our profit on each campaign? So we want to take a look at the business as a whole, but taking a look at each campaign in a standalone silo gives you the opportunity to be able to dial in and perfect it. And oftentimes one of the things I work with my clients is going through a challenge launch sequence. And as they get to the other side, it's like, how do we continue to increase those conversions, increase those earnings per lead, so that you can continue to scale up and start to see those significant increases. The very thing that had me go from a $5,000 launch to 55,000 to 85,000 to over six figures and beyond as a result of being able to take a look at those numbers. And it's easy sometimes that we want to ignore the numbers and we don't want to look at it and we don't want to pay attention to it. But every single team member is responsible for their metrics within our campaign. And then we come together and take a look at our full debrief before we go through and relaunch it and go through it again. So I think, having the habit of tuning in and paying attention and looking at your numbers all the time is incredibly important. And beyond that is making decisions based on the data. Like you're saying, numbers don't lie. So when you take a look at the data, it's like, well, this felt good, or this felt this. Well, it's like, you got to take a look at the numbers, because sometimes when our feelings get in the way. On the flip side too, sometimes we think that nobody wants it, or didn't work well, but when we actually look at the numbers, it was decent. So we've got to make
Mm-hmm.
logical decisions based on the data. And of course, you want to be in alignment with what it is that you're doing as well. But being able to make decisions based on the data takes the emotions out and just gets you to look at it objectively.
And it's fun. It's really interesting because you're a very happy entrepreneur. And I can say that from just being friends with you, and that we are constantly in communication. Sometimes, we fall off for a few weeks, then we check in, but you are generally like very joyful, very happy. And I think it actually has something to do with you being so data driven, because it really does take out the drama. There's like no
Mm-hmm.
drama. There's no drama in the numbers, right? There's no like, I
No.
feel, I think, I'm worried. It just gives you that peace of mind that you, good or bad, you don't have to guess as to what's actually happening in your business. And even just listening to you talk about your habit numbers, I think they're intuitive for you, but I don't think they're for everybody. I think that
Mm-hmm.
for many people, even people who have very big businesses, they are still, I just know I've gone into companies and clients in the 8-9 figures, and I'll say, well, when you send out email campaigns, what's the open rate like? And like, nobody knows, and
Mm-hmm.
it is interesting how data driven you are, and then how much you've been able to see success from it. And then also how much I think it really does contribute to your overall joy and happiness, just from being your friend. I would say that's my observation.
Yes. Well, I think it gives you a sense also of predictability too. For example,
Mm-hmm.
if we're running a campaign and we have a goal number for a sales goal number, and we're running into challenges with our ads, right? With our Facebook ads for driving traffic to it, and we're not getting the leads that we're expecting to get, but yet we still have the sales goal. Well, instead of saying, okay, we're still shooting for the same sales goal, if there's a challenge with the leads, or ad account gets shut down, or we're not generating the same number of leads, instead of continuing to go for whatever that goal was, it's like, okay, based on the leads that we're getting in, are we adjusting?
Yep.
Are we adjusting the end game goal and going for it that way? Or are we going to come up with new creative ways in order to generate the traffic, knowing that, okay, if you have a clear metric of knowing what you need to bring in on the front end with your leads coming in, or Facebook group members coming in, or people on your list coming in order to give the result that you're looking for, then it just becomes a question of, okay, am I adjusting the result, or am I adjusting the front end in order to be able to create that? And it takes the guesswork out of it, so that it's not like you're like running through it blind, hoping that it's going to come together for you,
Mm-hmm.
and then feeling disappointed that it didn't. Because if you generate half the number of leads on the front end, and you want the same sales goal, well, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because it's probably like, and I mean, there are miracles. I will be there first to say there are the odd miracles that come into place, but being real,
Right.
it's not probably likely to happen if you don't change something. So it
Right.
does give you the opportunity to be able to do that. And I love that too, that you say that. It does take when you take the emotion out of it, it's, you don't need to be into the stories that you tell yourself. And, we all have them. I still have those moments too of, the stories we tell ourselves of stuff, and you just catch yourself and get to move on.
Yeah. I think as entrepreneurs too, we have so much heart and soul in what we're doing that it's so easy to get emotional, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to get caught up in the what ifs, and is this going to happen, or should I be doing that? And I think being that data driven really does help so, so much. So let's think about maybe one other myth that we want to bust when it comes to Facebook groups. How about that high-end clients aren't hanging out in Facebook groups? That high ticket clients, or clients that are really serious about spending money, wouldn't go into a challenge or something like that. I've heard that before. What do you
So
think?
this is a great question. So just to put in perspective, I've had a complete stranger invest in a $30,000 package with me that I didn't know like 2 days before. So I always like to look at it as like, okay, how do we provide case examples of what is possible? So just to put that in perspective, 2 days before, no idea who I was, to purchasing a $30,000 package. Now, the question then becomes is, okay, like, our high level clients, are they coming into Facebook groups, people that are, that at that higher level? And here's the thing. If you're solving a problem that's a real world problem for someone at a high level, Of course they're going to want to tune in. They don't want to waste their time. So the method in your delivery can't be wishy-washy and long and drawn out, right? People want to like get what they're looking for and be able to move on. But 100%, I was actually in a conversation with a client of mine this morning, and we were having a conversation. She's connecting with someone for a collaborative event that she's putting together. And this particular person that she's connecting with has a multiple 7-figure business. And we were in a conversation how this person was in one of my pop-up Facebook groups going through a challenge that I was running, a free series that I was running. And my client says, like, I can't believe that this person, like multiple 7-figure business owner, went through this sequence. And I said to her, you know, for myself, being a 7-figure business owner is like that. I would rather be part of a challenge than sit through a webinar that I have to sit through, that you can't fast forward, that the structure of the webinar is going to be a certain way to move people forward. Whereas if you're running a free experience or a challenge and you can give someone like tactical, actionable things that are going to help solve a problem, immediate problem that they have in their business or in their life or whatever your area of expertise is, why would they not? As long as that you're delivering on what you're promising and you're helping them see things from a new perspective, why would they not? And so I think that there's a huge opportunity, but again, it comes with the languaging and the messaging that we're using to bring someone in, the way that we're communicating with them in order to move them across that line. And, every single day we see clients that are selling, 5-figure packages to people that were cold, like, 7 days before, 10 days before, and transition them to a high level program as a result of using their Facebook group. So 100% high ticket, high level clients are available there for you. But the thing is you can't be marketing to and speaking to a high level client while you're also simultaneously attracting that low level client, because they have different needs.
Yeah.
And so that's really where your intention and focus gets to come clear, and making sure that you're succinct, you're clear, you're speaking to problems that are relevant for the people that you want to attract, and you're giving them that value, but also while giving them value, evoking that desire for them to take that next step for you. Because the higher the level the person, the faster they want to get the problem solved, the more that they're wanting to invest. It's like, okay, I don't need all the fluff and all the BS. Like, just give me the goods, let me move forward, and I'm ready to move forward, right? So deliver that, right? They're not going to need as much hand-holding as you would do with, and I say lower level client, but everyone's at different stages. So it doesn't mean that you can have a lower price product that's meant for a higher level person. So that, it really does come down with how, your messaging and your attraction phase of bringing people into your group that's going to attract that high level client.
So, so good. And what I really hear you saying is that people who have lucrative businesses don't want to have their time wasted, because they value their time more than they value money.
Yes.
And so you want to make sure, because they're like, money's not a huge issue for me, but time is. I am in the weeds of my business, or so-and-so just quit, or I'm trying to hire another person to take stuff off my plate. And so that they have a need around anybody who's speaking to them to prioritize their time in terms of how that's spent. And so when you're thinking about people who are in the midst of scaling, in the midst of growing, what would be your number one piece of advice or your tip around having joy in the process and having joy in the journey, do you think?
Oh, that's so good. So I'm like, oh, we could go lots of places with this. And I honestly, and the first thing that comes to mind when you ask that to me is never succumbing to your thoughts by expecting them to just that they're truth, right? All of our beliefs and our experiences we take on as truth, that there's meaning to them. And the moment that we do that, we set ourselves up to be triggered. We set ourselves up to be responsive. We set ourselves up to tell ourselves stories and the illusions that we fabricate in our mind. And so I think the greatest gift that we can have to really, truly create joy is to really just give ourselves the opportunity to, like, whenever we do have a negative emotion or feeling, that we just stop and take a look at, like, what is it that I'm thinking right now that's having me feel this way? What is the story that I'm telling myself? And objectively being able to take a look at that. I just think that is the greatest gift that you can give yourself, to be the observer of what you're thinking rather than being in the emotion of what you're thinking. And my goodness, it's a complete, absolute game changer. And I'm going to add on a second one because, cheat like
Yes,
that.
please do. That was
The
really good. I just want to stop for a second. That's really good. And that's something that I've learned to do over time as well, where you can just watch something unfold and you're like, that's interesting, rather than, oh my goodness, here it goes. I'm going down. Right? Like,
Yes. Yes.
you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. This is an interesting piece of information. And now I coach my team on it. When you can almost see them moving from the frontal
Yes.
cortex to the middle brain when something comes up that they don't know how to handle or they've never seen before. And then you get to coach other people around that, which is really fun.
Yeah. And then I think the other one is really being of service. And a phrase that I always use with my clients is seek to understand versus seek to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
We spend so much time trying to convince people to see things from our perspective, to feel like people get us, for people to like us, for people to appreciate us, for people to pay attention to us, and all the other things that we want to prove of what the needing to be right,
Yes.
right? Like needing to whether it's with a team member, whether it's with the client, no matter what it is, there's always like this, when we're seeking to be understood, we want people to get us, we want them to understand, but the fastest way to be able to create that is really to seek to understand other people. And when you lead with that, and you're seeking to understand your clients better, when you're seeking to understand the problem better, when you're seeking to understand the numbers better, when you're seeking to understand other human beings better, and leading with that place of service, it gives you the opportunity to have the platform to share what's important to you. And it gets you out of sort of that, the needing to be right and prove something energy, and focused on service to other people. And I just think that in itself too leads to so much more joy and enjoying the process, because it's really not about the destination. It's about falling in love with the journey and the process of getting there. And which is a whole other conversation, because there's no happily ever after.
It's never better there than here.
No,
it's never. And when you've gone in so many different directions in entrepreneurship, like I have, I do try to explain that to people from time to time. And then they're usually like, okay, so then how do I make 7 figures again? And you're like, and it's totally cool, right? Because you have to be at a place, I think, in your journey where you realize like, oh, it's not better here than there. And it's not better if I'm multiple 7 figures. It's just a fun way to become somebody new in the process, where we get to become deeper versions of ourselves. It's not necessarily this huge transformation that we experience from the outside. We don't become different people just because we get to have more money in the bank account or more things. And as cliche as that sounds, I think as entrepreneurs, we sometimes are tempted by some of the messaging out there.
Yes.
Some of the the startup messaging and all of that makes you think, okay, oh, wow, and they ads of the bros in front of their, private planes and things like that. And they're really hot wives. And I'm happy for them with their hot wives. Like, I mean, I think it's fantastic. I mean, our husbands have hot wives, so good for them.
There you go. Yes.
But it does sometimes put an idea in people's heads that that's the destination, right?
Yes.
That's where you're trying to get to, which isn't we know the case. So yeah.
So good. So true.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me, Christina. It's been great to chat with you. I'm so glad that our audience has had a chance to experience what I experience on a regular basis in our friendship. And you're such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. And just thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
So then how do people get in touch with you? How do they find you if they're sold on this whole Facebook group thing, which I'm sure they are? Where do they find out more?
So you can find me on Facebook at Deliver Your Genius, or you can find me on Instagram at Christina with a ch.Jandali, or deliveryourgenius.com. And we can pop in a link as well if you want, in the sense of if you want to get started with your Facebook group and how to get those first 1,000 members coming in, we'll pop in a link so you guys can pick up that resource as well.
Perfect. Yep. We'll put it in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us. And I am just so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Laura.